Welcome everyone to yet another fantastic element which I'm bringing today in the series by Sonalis Cubo. Here I am, Vayjayanti Pugalia, welcoming you to yet another splendid conversation with two amazing women, or should I say youthful women who have joined in with me today. And I would soon be giving a much formal introduction about Mahima Varma and Saumya Varma. But let me just welcome them today in the conversation. Hi, Saumya and Mahima, and welcome to my show.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Philanthropy is broadly defined as the love of humanity. In today's modern world, philanthropy usually involves creating initiatives and businesses which is going to be benefiting the general public. And what is fantastic is that a very big and wide group of people is totally left out of it, or should I say, are not very much in focus. It is overlooked, and that is our youth. And do you know that India has more than 50% of its population under the age of 25? And the main point to remember is that in the years to come, they are the ones who would be running our economy. They are the ones who would be giving the face to our nation. This is why it is important to mold them into responsible and caring human beings of today. And it is our duty to instill pride, care, love, and a lot of empathy for mankind in the youth. And one family who has taken this forward, one family who I am a total fan of, and one family who has built a legacy with which these girls are moving on, is a legacy built by Shamluji Dudeja with the Calcutta Foundation and the face behind Sri Katha, the revivalist of Katha. And these girls are just phenomenal in taking this legacy ahead. Let me introduce to you Saumya Varma, who has graduated from the Haverford College in Pennsylvania in the year of 2018 with a BA in sociology and minors in health studies. And would you believe it, guys? Peace, justice, and human rights. What better way to build up your career? And after that, she did loads with, with her works, which I would want actually Saumya to talk about that. And joining her is her sister Mahima, who has graduated from the Duke University and also has a BA in sociology and physiology. So welcome, guys, and taking our conversation ahead. Saumya, I would like to begin today's conversation with you by asking you, why did you choose peace and justice? Why did you want to take up these subjects? Was it like because you were seeing this from such a young age in your life? What motivated you to take up these minor subjects, which might be minors for you, but they're like huge, you know? So yes, if you could share that with us, please.
Absolutely. So I think you touched on it a little bit, but growing up for us, both Mahima and I have been very aware of the diversity of experiences that kind of embody our country, as well as the very real inequality that exists. I think most of it has been like our exposure, and the fact that we're so sensitive to it has not just been because of the education that we got, which played a large part of it since we went to a school like Loreto House. So a lot of the values were instilled in us. But I think the greater impact that we had on us was because of the work that, as you said, my grandmother has been doing for so long. I think since we were very young children, I remember going to my grandmother's house, whether it was on weekends or, at any point, we always saw her working with the women that she has been empowering for years. Very often we would like go into the village with her, so firsthand we would kind of witness the impact that she has had. We would see the issues that she's kind of trying to tackle and deal with. So I don't think any of this was very intentional on either my grandmother's part, or intentional in the sense that I don't think it was intentional that she wanted it to have an impact on us, but just
I know.
growing up around it, we saw how much she was doing,
Right.
and just came face to face with it at all points, and my parents have also had like a huge part. Like they've also very embodied the kind of like sensitive people who have made us very aware, especially of the economic divide, of everything that's going on. Like we didn't grow up kind of unaware to everything that was happening. We grew
Mhm.
up knowing things and knowing how privileged we are to be living the life that we are living. So I think both these factors really impacted me. And I remember, I think it was in class 10 when, or 9 or 10, something like that, when we had to do this project on human rights. And at that point, I don't think before that I had really looked into human rights as this mechanism and like the institutions and the way that governments deal with human rights. It was kind of my first step into realizing how big a field of study that human rights was.
Right.
Um, and because I think I had been like living with it for so long without ever giving it that term, it kind of clicked for me, and social justice and human rights and peace kind of became my passion. So that's how I think all this came to be, and that's what I took with me into college. I always knew that I wanted to do something with peace, justice, and human rights. And health studies kind of came a little bit later, but it connected very well for me. So like you said, like they weren't minors, they were what defined my college career. Most of my classes I kind of tried to bring in this theme, and I think even the summers that I would come back from college, I spent working with different organizations who worked with women who had been trafficked into prostitution. So it's all been very, very connected. And I think the link starts from when I was a child. And eventually, I went on to write my thesis on trafficking and prostitution in India. Um, which, even though it was a sociology thesis, it was largely based on peace, justice, and human rights, which was my minor.
That is really awesome, Soumya. And I would like to, come back to you with one very interesting question, because as you talked about building a thesis on trafficking and prostitution, that's what your thesis was.
Mhm.
Okay, let me just complete this and then maybe I'll ask him about that. I don't want to break the channel. Lately there was this beautiful article which I read, about this amazing girl, again, doing her thesis somewhere in Europe. And she wrote this beautiful article about the prostitutes during lockdown. Have you read any article about that? And as you've written a thesis on prostitution and sex trafficking, what are your views, or have you like studied or read something about, we are doing so much for the general public, and everyone is doing in some way or the other, but
Yeah.
this particular section, I should not be saying it was like the bread and butter, and now however you want to say, in the minimal words we can. So what are your views about that?
So I think I've read actually quite a few articles because I'm still connected to some of the organizations who are working in this area. And some of our efforts, which we'll go into later, but some of our efforts have been to help some of these organizations. But yeah, like a lot of the articles, a lot of the conversations we've had have highlighted COVID and Amphan have impacted everybody. Like it's been terrible for lots of people, but it has been particularly a terrible impact on them also, because I think even while I was doing my thesis, what I kind of realized was that the stigma that surrounds this kind of work makes these women a very kind of hidden part of our society. So they're not often the first people you think of when you're trying to give out aid or when you're trying to do any kind of welfare work. So the impact that this time has had on them has been bad, but at the same time, I think there have been fewer people who are working to help women who are still in prostitution. And like you said, they've also lost income. They also are having trouble with food and with everything. But I think that the reason it's worse in a lot of ways is because it's not a very talked about section of our society.
True. And yes, we will be soon talking about all the relief work that you've been doing with Mahima along. And then maybe I'll ask you if in this particular sector also you want to diversify. So, Mahima, coming to you, my dear, you were just in time to come back home before the lockdown started and you completed your studies, you came back. What are your views about, the initiatives going back, taking ahead by you guys and already in a format, started by the Calcutta Foundation, but now both of you are taking it to yet different reach. So if you could tell me your views on the same.
So like you said, I just got back in time to kind of get pulled into all of this work. And I think, like Saumya mentioned right from the beginning, as long as we, for as long as we can remember, we've been made aware of our position of privilege in Indian society, but also how that puts us in a place where we are almost obligated to work for those who aren't in the same positions. And it's like, it is something that we've done all of our lives. It is something that, our grandmother especially has always encouraged us to work under the Calcutta Foundation name to kind of help her to do as much as we can. I think, just like you mentioned, I came back early March. I had to leave. It was my final year of college, and then suddenly the virus became a lot more real than we expected it to. And coming back, I don't think like Saumya was already working with Mayuri, which we'll get to later. So the plan was never to be able to do this kind of work. When we came back, it was always, I was going to look into my field. I didn't have anything concrete planned, but this was never something that I had come back with the aim to jump on board with. But I think the way Mayuri has transformed in the last 3 months, and the way we've been able to just kind of like, I almost say like problem solve day by day. Every day a different thing comes up that we're looking to see what we can do for, how we can help. I mean, I couldn't sit home and not do it with her, like with her being so involved. And so I think we're both in such a lucky place that we have the support system to be able to do it, and that we're actually getting so much trust and so much support from the society around us, from so many people, so many community partners, collaborations, and just I think we're in a very lucky position to not only want to do this stuff, but also be able to actually implement it in the way that we have been able to.
That's fantastic. But like, she had so many other subjects which backed her, and she talked about how she got enveloped into this. If you could like share about your early childhood memories, if you can, which sort of, as Saumya said, that which did not like impel you, but maybe just gave you a seed to ponder about that. If you could share some light on that.
I think definitely growing up in the family that I've grown up in and seeing so much work happen around me, small things like going and playing cricket in the villages with the children of the girls that were working with Nani, or like going to, very small steps right from the beginning. It's been such a big part of our lives. And then so my defining moment, I think, would be in 2012 when the Nirbhaya case happened. I think we were so young, and I was in class 9, I would say. Yeah, I think 9 or 10. And that was my introduction into even sex and like just the act of, like physicality. And then for it to have been something so horrific, for me never to have, been able to think about rape before, and then to have this be like my first introduction, it's definitely something that really, really sparked this passion within me to kind of work for women and work for inequality, that it really impacted me. And like I said, Nani's always been so encouraging of us taking on our own initiatives under her, and supporting us through it. In 2013, I started something called Girls for Tomorrow, when I was in class 10, I think, where I was working with welfare schools around the city and taking self-defense classes and political awareness classes. And, it was something very small. It was something very, obviously I had incredible support from everybody around me. And I think that's what shaped my passions. Duke has been the most an amazing platform for me to build on it. I don't know how much you know about the university, but it really allows you to kind of make it your own, make the experience your own. So in that, I was able to do a lot of work. I did a research project with prisoners in Durham, North Carolina. And then for my senior thesis, actually, I was able to travel to Jordan and Rwanda and do work with refugees, and just spend 2 months completely immersed in these two cultures, living with the violence that was so inherently a part of it, and then working with people who fell victim to it. And that's what my journey has been. My passion became to work with people, and I think this is how I have gotten here.
That's commendable. And if I now want to speak about, Project Mayuri. So, Saumya, if you could tell us, as Mahima also instigated that Project Mayuri has taken over a change, since pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. So, first of all, what is Project Mayuri? And then if both of you can share the light about its processes, how it has magnified, what are the changes you had to bring due to the pandemic, the area of focus, the area where you are implying these projects in terms of the infrastructure and the place. So if we can begin with that with you, Saumya.
Sure. So I started Project Mayuri late last year, I think around September. And I think the way that started is that I knew, even when I was in college, that before I started my master's, I wanted to go back to the US and do my master's. But I knew that before I went back for that, I wanted to spend a year or two in India, either working with an NGO or starting something by myself. So when I came back in September, and I thought about starting something, initially I spent about 1 or 2 months working in the villages, talking to women to get a sense of what the issue was and what it was that we could do to help them. So one of the things that emerged that was very, very important at that time, and I think still is the lack of access that there is in a lot of these areas, even in the outskirts of our city, the lack of access to healthcare for women and children. Mm-hmm. So that came up in a lot of conversations that I was having. So I decided that maybe I would start Project Mayuri with the focus to do something about that. So initially what we were doing before all this happened was that we were setting up monthly rural outreach clinics. We had adopted 4 villages and we had women and children, almost 2,000 women and children who were registered with us. And we were taking doctors from the city, from Calcutta, from prominent hospitals in the city, into the village, and we were providing free consultation, we were providing medicines, and we were providing like blood tests and stuff if they needed. But the goal was to kind of improve the overall health of the people who were registered with us, mm-hmm. And address that kind of lack that there was.
And where are these villages, if I may ask, like exactly like?
Sure. So there were villages and outskirts of the city, which is why I was stressing on that. So 2 are in this, I don't know how well you know, but Garia, which is about 1 hour away from here. And then 2 areas that we were focusing on was in Diamond Harbour, right. Diamond Harbour district. So right. That was a little bit further away and that was more interior. So we had kind of 2 populations that we were working with. And I think, what we saw was that the distance from the city, it took me an hour or 2 hours to get there because I was going by car. But when you think about traveling by public transport and everything that
It
entails.
becomes difficult. Yeah.
Exactly. So the distance, then the cost of coming into the city and meeting a doctor,
True.
plus just how busy and involved a lot of these women are in their homes. What
Right.
happens is that their health does not often become a priority.
Right.
So it wasn't like we were trying to tackle the bigger like surgery kind of issues. What we were trying to do is do smaller interventions, so that
Yeah.
by improving nutrition, by improving like the general health, what we were hoping to do was when maybe a bigger issue happens, that the impact is not as much because the general health is better.
No, I think it's a very right target you picked up, Saumya, because if the women health are good, the family's health are good. That is the way
Exactly.
it is, whether we agree to it or not. It's the women basically who is the center and the
The
catalyst of
backbone.
all. Yes. So
Right.
yeah, I have a question. Why did you just think for like all the medical like the facilities more for women? It wasn't like for general for like men and women. You wanted to concentrate on the women and pick up that section.
Yeah, we did. I wanted to focus on women, and children are a part of that because children are so much a part of a woman's life. And
Right.
so the reason I wanted to focus on women and children is because a lot of the issues that a woman faces, whether it's during puberty, whether it's during menopause, whether when you're pregnant, like there are so many stages in a woman's life that kind of need that extra care, that a lot of these women were not getting. So, for example, in the conversations that I was having before I decided to focus on something, I met a couple of girls who were only like 19 years old or 18, very, very young women, or, you would even call them girls, who were almost full term. They were 9 months pregnant, and they had just not had enough care. They had not had attention. They were malnourished. They were so underweight. They were just not being able to eat, but every time they would go to government hospitals, just because of how many people there are and how full these hospitals are, they were asked to come back when they were in labor. This one girl had not had a proper ultrasound done, so she didn't know her due date. She didn't know her date of conception. There was just so many gaps that we really take for granted. Like when a person is pregnant, in who we know, you give them so much extra care, and this girl just hadn't had that. So that is why I wanted to focus on women, because I wanted women's health, which is, like I'm saying, not a priority in a lot of these areas, to become the priority.
True.
um, in a lot, like when I was doing the registration, I did have a lot of women who came with their husbands, and they were like, but why not my husband? Are you not going to look at my husband? I said, yes, maybe eventually, but right now I wanted to be focused on um, and I think I also kind of wanted to change the dynamic in a way where she was bringing her husband with her. So we did give, like, the ID card was for the woman. And then if we did have, more time, for if the doctors were ready to stay for a little bit longer, the husband or anyone else in the family came with her, whereas it's usually the other way around. So I wanted to really put the focus and spotlight on women.
That's fantastic. If I have to just pick up two things of what you just told to me, Soumya, right now, is to make the card in the name of the lady so that she brings in a husband. And in a rural area, especially in the villages, if you are imbibing this empowerment, it is totally awesome. And second, that what you just said was being so young, you yourself, you being so consciously active with this particular stigma that you came across, where this particular woman did not know her due date and she did not know her conception date, etc. So it is commendable that in such a young age both of you are so conscious about the root cause as to why you should start Project Mayuri. So Mahima, if I have to ask you, Saumya did say about the area of focus about Project Mayuri and the villages where it's being targeted and why women. She was very clear with that. So, how did pandemic change the entire work process of Project Mayuri? If you can share that with us.
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that happened with the pandemic that directly affected us is that doctors got really, really busy. So just logistically, we couldn't take doctors from these fantastic, like, large scale hospitals because they just had a different priority. And then also social distancing had become a norm. We couldn't have these large gatherings of 500, 600, 700 women. So it kind of, initially we just stopped, or Saumya just stopped, and Mayuri.
No, it's okay to say we. Now it's a project, it belongs to both of you. So Saumya won't mind if you say we, right, Saumya?
Never.
All right, so fine. Mahima, please go on.
So so we had to suspend like all of the activities that we had, but I don't think we ever anticipated that the pandemic would last this long. So I remember I had just come back when the suspension had started, and we had a couple of health camps lined up that had to be canceled and things like that. But it was, at that time, it was very temporary. It was like, we'll wait for a month, maybe a month and a half until things get better, and then pick up from there.
Right.
And we waited a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the lockdown started, and it wasn't something we were consciously thinking about. And then suddenly, week 3 of the lockdown, Saumya started getting insane amounts of appeals because all the places that she had been working with had been very badly affected by unemployment and by this nationwide lockdown. Right. So suddenly there was, completely out of the blue, Saumya got a call one day from one of the districts, which I think she would be able to elaborate on better because she did the conversation. And that's how it started. But when we started relief work, it was very small scale. It was very, they need something right now, so let's just do this for the next couple of weeks for one village for 200 people. And I think Saumya can elaborate a little bit better on that.
Yes, Saumya. So if you want to talk about the changes and just take up from where Mahima left.
Yeah, sure. So like Mahima saying, we were kind of just hoping to ride out the pandemic and not really looking or thinking about relief work then. And then one morning, I remember I got this call from we can call them like the team leader in the place where we were doing this work. And they asked for help with food for daily wage workers in their area who hadn't, been making a living for the last 3 weeks or whatever that was at the point of the lockdown. So when we got that call and when we started discussing, like within my family, when we started discussing what we could do, we were more looking at it like a one time, the money that we have in the foundation, etc. What can we do with that to send immediate kind of help for this one district? At that point, we didn't even imagine or think that it would become a larger thing. It was just that I've worked so closely with this person and I've met these people so many times. If I need to, kind of transfer my funds and think about doing something right now for them, that's what we'll do. So that's where it came from. It wasn't a conscious decision to switch to doing relief work. I think, but then and even then it was a small, like I'm saying, a very small group of people. And then once we started kind of looking into it, when we started getting more calls, like that was the first call, but then I got calls from a lot more people who are working in these areas. And the appeals, as and when the appeals started coming in, we started trying to fundraise a little bit for it. We started sending out, our own appeals to help us with this thing. And first we were focusing on only providing rations. Like we were trying to send dry rice, dal, aloo, that kind of stuff immediately. But then as and when we got appeals, it kind of started becoming bigger. It started changing to different things. Like we went from rations to giving cooked food in some areas to doing a lot of different things like that. But that's how it started. It started with one call.
So that is the beauty of I think so the project Mayuri, that whatever you are doing in this project Mahima and Saumya, it is the appeal from these sectors. What is required is what you're catering to. Sometimes certain projects are just too varied. You don't know whether the area of focus and the project, if it's going to be sustainable, or and is it actually required in that area. But with so much of tension going on, with the pandemic on, and still things being not very much at hand, you guys knew exactly what the calling is of the people, and you started to cater to that. So Mahima, now you are totally involved with Saumya into this. Okay, so now if I have to ask you, changes happened, pandemic is on, it's still going on, what is happening now with Project Mayuri?
So I was just going to add, with the pandemic, of course, we started doing COVID relief. So then we kind of looked at doing masks and sanitizers, soap, that kind of stuff. But then another very real disaster happened, and that was Amphan, and it completely changed again the course of our movement. And then, we kind of got aware of even newer problems, even more urgent problems. I think COVID was one aspect of people's lives, which was fear, this uncertainty. But with Amphan, there was a very physical destruction that needed very urgent, very immediate work. And I remember, like, the night Amphan happened, we had lost all electricity, lost all connection. And then the next morning, Soumya and I both suddenly with like thinking, okay, now what? Like, our house has been affected in a certain way. One can only imagine what is happening around the state. And so, like you said, we work very, very on the grassroots level. So we have community partners and representatives all over in the 6 districts that we've been working on that are very much a part of the society. They live there, they are immersed into the culture, and they recognize the needs. And so whatever work we've been doing has been very tailored to each unique area and unique need. So, some people have asked for sanitary napkins. We've sent relief material with sanitary napkins. Someone's asked for X number of jerry cans. We've been sending jerry cans. So each we don't have, it's very funny. A lot of people ask us, well, how many people have you worked with? Or give us numbers. We don't have numbers. We've done 10,000, we've done 1,000 cooked meals for 10 days in one area. But is that 10,000 people, or is that 1,000 people? We don't have numbers, and we're not looking for numbers. That's not the focus. Is like, well, we're sending someone something, we're sending someone. It's a very, very, like, from a distance, it's a very chaotic web. But because I really isn't that I don't think that in any situation you can have a one size fit all solution. So I think that's what our strength is, that we've been able to adapt to, our appeals, adapt to our requests, and work just very with the people, directly with the communities that we're working in, instead of relying on outsiders, instead of relying on middlemen.
Yes, so it's like a direct, project and a direct need and catered to project Mahima that you are talking about. So if I actually understand the entire channel, wherein I do understand that these are the villages which are in the outskirts of, the city, villages which are totally in need with, as you said, maybe chaotic, but the need which they have for an everyday sustainability. It can be food, it can be sanitary pads, it can be medical help, it can be anything. So how do you monitor this entire channel? As you said, there's no middlemen, you guys are handling it directly. So for the audiences to get connected with Project Mayuri and to understand how this transparency is working, so that because all of us want to do charity and are doing charity, but as there are certain calamities which take advantage, or people just want to know that it's happening in the right spirit and it's going in the right hands. And you guys are totally dedicated to make that correct reach. As you said, it's the ideation and the reach that you're creating. What numbers are getting impacted is not what is there in your mind. So Mahima and Saumya, do tell me about your channel, the transparency, which I'm sure is going to magnify the number of people who won't want to come forward and support Project Mayuri, because I think that trust building and that transparency is very important.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I think what has been one very crucial part of it is that even when we started this work, we didn't want to break any of the norms that were coming into play. So we didn't want to start doing this work, but then break social distancing or like break the stay at home kind of order that was going around. So all of the work that we have been doing has been, Mahima and I have been at home. We haven't stepped out and gone to do the distribution ourselves. So the way it usually has been working is that we do the coordination and we do the fundraising, we do the logistics, we do the like organizing all the material. And then we have, like Mahima said, we have these partners who I've been working with for a while now, who we send it to. So we send it to X place or whatever where it gets collected. And then we have a person there who's monitoring the distribution. So we get pictures, we get names, we get all the kind of proof in a way that's necessary for us to ensure that everything is going into the right hands and the distribution is happening the way that we want it to. So for example, when after Amphan happened, we got all these, we got this news about how badly the places were affected. We made like frantic calls to find out what it was that we needed to send. And one of the big kind of requirements that came up was tirpals, like the tarpaulin that you put on top of homes, because a lot of the roofs had been blown away. And one of the places where we were trying to reach is Sagar Island, which I'm sure you know about. It's complete. It was like in the eye of the storm. It was very, very badly hit. So that was actually we tried to send material within like the first few days to Sagar because of how badly it was hit. And the journey, it's like 3.5 hours away. You go by car, you go by boat and all that. But even that material, we were not there. A lot of like the communication was down because the network was so bad at that point. But we were one of the first people to reach Sagar with our relief material because we had people on the ground who we could trust to do the distribution. So, it's that trust factor again, where of course we ask for pictures, we ask for names, we ask for all that stuff. But at the same time, because we have these connections with the people who are going to be doing the distribution, we know that it's all the material that we send is going to the people we intended to reach to.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So, Mahima, what are the next steps now? Like, what are the the adjectives that we are looking at where Project Mayuri can require support? Because I think that's very important that we tell the viewers, and that obviously, as you know, that philanthropy is always a teamwork. Even if I know I can give 100%, if I'm getting another 100%, we should be very porous to that. So if I have to ask you, what is the next that we're looking at? Any targets that we need to match up to? Anything that is going on right now that needs a collection on, which we can tell the viewers and they can reach out to you to make that happen?
No, for sure. We have actually a phase we're working in a phase right now that we call 10,000 Smiles. And this is actually very close to our hearts because it is, we're working, this collection is just for children all over in the 6 districts that we've been working for, who have also been very badly affected. Their normalcy has been shaken, but I don't think young children fully understand the situation and understand what it is that has caused them to be in the current situation that they are. So what we are hoping to do for this phase is collect small bags of just fun things that children will enjoy. So like a juice box or even milk. Milk is not as, a lot of these districts aren't have gotten a cutoff of milk, even milk, biscuits, juice boxes. We're doing pencils and notebooks. Actually, we've started a drive with some of our, we call them Mayuri youth, so school-going kids who are collecting old notebooks, and we're building books that we can send to these the children in these districts. So that's what we're doing right now. But I think the work is still, like, we're working and we want to work. We've reached a point where we've been able to do a lot of work, but there's still so much more to do. I think COVID is still going to affect the population that we're working with. Like, just because the lockdown is over doesn't mean these people are suddenly going to get their jobs back. Like, I think it's also a privilege to return to normalcy. And a lot of people don't have that. So the daily wage workers, migrant laborers, they don't have that job security to go back to. So just because the unlock phase 2, I guess, is happening, a lot of people are still out of jobs. A lot of people are still not going to be able to go back to this normal life before COVID. So we want to keep working with them. We want to send more rations. In the Amphan affected regions, we want to do house building now. So the tarpaulin was an immediate relief that we thought we needed to send out first before monsoon hits. But now that that's done, we've covered that base. We want to do rebuilding. So send out maybe tiles and try and actually get onto the ground and help rebuild some of these homes. We do want to do, keeping in line with our initial goal, we do want to do a sanitary napkin drive and work with women's health and sanitary napkins in these districts. So there's a lot to do and a lot we want to keep doing. And all help is obviously appreciated.
So that's fantastic. So the viewers who have joined us a little late and the ones who don't know Saumya and Mahima, I'm in conversation with Saumya and Mahima Varma, the founders of Project Mayuri. Fantastic duo who's trying to impact lives of so many, whether they are children, whether they are people who have been homeless due to the Amphan or who need ration. So much of relief work, giving them temporary sheds, healthcare is what they started before the pandemic. So, Saumya, if these projects that you're doing under Project Mayuri, the sub-projects, like the Smile project, which is going on now, or collection of ration, and the vivid different sub categories, where do people know about that? Is that they come to know about that from your Facebook and Instagram page, or do you have any WhatsApp groups, or how can they know more about your project, and where can they know that now what is going on in Project Mayuri, and this is how we can connect to it?
So we have our Facebook page and Instagram profile have actually become a lot more live now, because we actually have an amazing amount of support from the youth. Like Mahima was saying, I think it's been amazing how much we've been able to work with a lot of school-going students, and they've been so enthusiastic and so fantastic about helping us. And one of the things they've been doing is handling our social media, so that has become much nicer. So definitely through our social media, we post a lot to try and keep people up to date about what our next steps are. We also have a website where we which again is linked to on both our pages, but that has updates on what we have been doing, how many people we've reached, like basically the impact of each phase is also kind of uploaded on that, as well as what we're working on next. We don't have a WhatsApp group yet, but that can definitely be something we start. It's a good idea.
Please add to that, because I would love to be a part and know more about it. And every time, Saumya, that you mentioned, if I know Garya, or if I know, the such and such island, the main power with working with Rotary has given me that, that clarity with so many villages and districts and islands around our city which need help, So yes, I would, because we're talking about philanthropy, and I would not stop mentioning Rotary in this. So yes, I do know about these areas of focus that you have intended, and they're actually the right places, Saumya and Mahima, what you're doing work on. So I wanted to know, and this intrigues me. Both of you, as you said, have been working on the appeals which came to you from these sectors. But generally speaking, okay, now we talked about the pandemic and the works around it, which needs to be catered, or we talked about like the amphin. But generally speaking, Mahima and Saumya, as youth initiators of philanthropy, these sectors of work that you see in India, especially now, I should say in Calcutta, because let's talk about your city and the villages, what is that you feel needs to be done as a sustainable work which can be initiated in these areas? And we would start with Mahima on that.
I think there's so much to be done in so many varied like fields. I think the beauty of India is the duality, where there is opportunity, there is access, but there also is such a lack of. And I think you can literally find a way to make impact in whatever it is that you're passionate about. So if you're passionate about singing, there's a way to connect that with impact. I think if you're passionate about like, I don't know, the animals, feed 6 stray dogs on your street. There's just so much that can be done. And I think that I mean, for me, my passion is women's equality. This is something that I've always felt very strongly about. So that is my area of focus. But I don't think that there's one thing that needs work. I think there's just so much that can be done. And I think that's the beauty of like being able to do that, is like you can really connect to a cause and make it happen.
What do you have to say about that, Saumya? If you could add your views on, the areas which came as, like a call, which you see cannot be worked on now because of the constraints that we have, but can be catered to later.
So I think while I was, the few months that I was actually able to go into the villages and the outskirts of the city myself and, interact with people, have conversations with them, one of the biggest things that came up for me is just how interconnected issues are in these areas. I mean, it is everywhere, but especially to be able to make a long lasting and sustainable impact, I think what is extremely important is kind of like a multifaceted approach. It's very, you will of course make a lot of difference if you're focusing on one thing, but issues are so connected to each other that you have to attack you have to attack multiple things at the same time. So for example, with healthcare, what I realized is the camps are super important, the clinics are super important, like, giving them access to this is very important, but at the same time, the health is so interconnected to like the hygiene, the lack of clean drinking water, the lack of employment, the lack of education. Like there are just so many other issues that come back to it and impact health, that without tackling all of these things, you will make change, but it won't be like, you won't make long lasting sustainable change. So even in the few months that I was working, we were already trying to evolve into a couple of different things where while doing these health clinics, we were trying to also look at a project where we could clean the ponds that a lot of the houses were on. We were trying to kind of start some sanitary napkin production unit, or find a way to give them sanitary napkins that are reusable, so a lot of these issues are very, very connected. And we were trying to kind of come at it from all directions, which of course had to be put on hold because of the pandemic. But I think that is the biggest thing that I learned, where when in the beginning, when I had gone into talking to these women to trying to find one thing to focus on, it's very difficult to find one thing. It has to be a couple of different things that you're trying to work on at the same time.
Very, very correctly said, because until you don't have this basics in place, to put on any other project will not be sustainable. Clean drinking water, or the sanitary issue, the hygiene,
Right.
so many things that one needs to cater to. So as I began today's conversation, and I was talking about that, how youth can make a difference in terms of philanthropy, and how much this sector waits for that mid-age to come and then start working. I don't know why, but this is the time when the energy and the youth and the flair can be used at a level where we middle ages, we can't. So what do you want to say, Mahima, to more people, more youth to, come forward? Because as you both very correctly said, there's so much to be done. There's so much of work to be done. Right now, you both are busy with meeting the ends somehow for the post-Amphan and the ongoing pandemic relief work. But beyond that, more sustainability that needs to be created in these platforms, in these areas, in these suburban villages. So much is required. There's a lot of villages where there's no light still, so involving with solar panels, just so much can be done. So as smart Indian youth, what do you want to say to your sort of counterparts everywhere?
So I would say two things specifically. One, I would say find your passion and make that your cause. So whatever your passion is, it can translate into making impact and helping others. And I think in India, there has been a negative connotation that comes with nonprofit work. In that people think that it needs to take over your life. And I don't think that that's what it is. I think that small things, small steps, small efforts can still make a difference. This doesn't have to be your career. It can be, and it's great if it is, but it doesn't have to be your career, and it doesn't have to be something that completely is all you do. You can have smaller efforts, smaller daily sustainable things. Like I said, if your passion is feeding is animals, feed 10 dogs on your street every day. If your passion is reading, read to the in an old age home. If your passion, whatever your passion is, it can help make somebody's life a little bit better. That's number one. And the other thing I would say is that if you don't think you have a cause that you connect with, just read, subscribe to socially relevant media, read, immerse yourself into issues, into conversations, and I guarantee you will find something that you connect with. I don't think empathy is something that, I think empathy is very innate, very inherent in human beings. It just needs to be nurtured in the right way, and the way to nurture it is through knowledge, and is to build that. To build the empathy, you have to connect with the stories. You have to know. You can't live ignorant. So if you don't want to do anything, the least you can do is just kind of be aware, be in tune of what's happening in the world. There's so much happening. There's so much that constantly requires, justice and leveling. And the smallest start is just to be aware of it and just to kind of learn about it.
That's so beautifully said, Mahima, about that empathy is something which is there in you. And the more you read, the more you nurture it, the more you water it, it grows, and you realize what your calling is. And that's so beautifully said. Saumya, your thoughts on this, please?
I think Mahima said a lot of what is just my experience has been, because yes, I think a lot of people our age are not directly doing as much philanthropy, but I think that there has been, at least from my generation, and as I see more youth, I think there has been a general push towards being more aware, about being more involved. Like I'm saying, even with, just the response that we've got with Mayuri, and with the number of youth who are still in school, who've gotten involved and so enthusiastically, so I think even and particularly in this time when, you can't physically be going somewhere to volunteer, I think even though circumstances make it a little bit more difficult, online there's still so much work to do. There's still so much help that I think all organizations need. I think most NGOs, most nonprofits are still in need of a lot of support, and manpower, really speaking. So even if you can volunteer 1 or 2 hours in a week, or you can lend your skill of doing something, it's still very, very valuable to us. Like, I mean, I'm telling you, our team, once it expanded, we've been able to do so much more work because we're not trying to manage everything. So even if it feels like 1 hour or 2 hours a week is not enough, it's on the person who's receiving that. It's a huge help.
Yeah,
So
we have a group of say 15 school going kids, like class 9, class 10, from schools all over the city, who have just been so helpful, so enthusiastic, and have just brought new energy into our project that Saumya and I were kind of juggling with in the beginning. And they've like taken initiative, done things on their own, texted us, what can we do, what can we do, what can we do, and that's just been the most fantastic, most helpful thing to have had recently.
I am totally out of words now. So Shamluji and, Malika ji, you have raised two beautiful dynamics, should I say, full on, who know what their focus is. And if on a social endeavor level, you both can, exhibit so much of discipline and so much of exuberance, I wonder when it is a commercial that you work on, what miracles and, magnanimous growth you're going to initiate, and that's beautiful. So before we wrap up quickly, I want to tell the viewers, Project Mayuri is what Saumya and Mahima are working on. And as Saumya said, that you can connect with that on their page, which is the Project Mayuri by Calcutta Foundation. And you can reach their website, you can Google about them, you can find them on Instagram and get connected to them with their ongoing sub endeavors under Project Mayuri. There's so much to do that they have planned, so much of transparency they have in their work. So yes, what do you want to tell the viewers, Saumya, before we leave, about Project Mayuri, about your thoughts in general? Yes, it's your platform. Kindly share.
I think I just want to end by saying that both Mahima and I have been overwhelmed by the amount of support we've got from the people we know, from the people we don't know, the trust that we've received. We've been able to do so much work, which none of it would have been possible without the support of our wonderful, friends, families, extended network. And I think just along that vein, every single contribution has gone such a long way to helping people. So we are very, very grateful. We're very humbled, and we just hope we can keep doing this work.
That's beautiful. Mahima, over to you, please.
I mean, I would just echo that. I think that we've received so much trust and so much support. And I don't think we would have been able to do anything without that. And so we are where we are because people are allowing us to be where we are. And that's just been the most amazing and most rewarding part of the whole experience.
That's amazing. And as you can see, viewers, these two dynamic personalities, their thoughts and their focus, their creativity, their philanthropy is so big that we must all get connected to Project Mayuri, because youth philanthropy does matter. Firstly, it helps to improve the younger generation in terms of their outlook and the respect that they have for humanity. And secondly, it is going to be forming the society which is going to be coming soon. And that's where youth plays a very, very important role. And we should support them, because I think Saumya and Mahima, you both will agree that so much of support you must have got from Malika ji and Shamlu ji, that you were able to carry and bring the changes in the mindset, in the thoughts, in the in the leadership, and go ahead with what you're focused in. So yes, viewers, to support the youth in whatever small and big they do in form of a charity to a philanthropy is very, very important, because once the youth knows that they're making a difference in the lives of many, they would want to incubate it into bigger and better projects. Because I think true leaders are born only out of empathy, what Mahima very correctly said. It is about having the ability to relate and connect to the purposes which is going to be inspiring the lives of many. We should hear what the other one wants us to hear. We should see what the others want to make us see, and we should connect to and trust and love and believe in the heart of which is in front of us. And because we already have this heart with us, but what is more important is to look into the heart which is in front. So yes, on that note, Saumya and Mahima, it was a pleasure chatting with both of you, and I wish you all the very best for Project Mayuri. And I'm sure a lot of viewers who have got inspired with you today would like to connect to your project and make this their own and take it to yet amazing heights of success. I wish you both all the very best.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having us.
It's my pleasure. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye.
See you viewers yet again, probably, yes, the day after tomorrow when I come back. But for today, I'm leaving you with two amazing women who have created difference in the lives of so many. So yes, please support them, support Project Mayuri. Bye-bye, dearies. Take care.